Welcome to another episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
Welcome, everybody, again to another episode of our show, bringing you not one, but two awesome guests today involved in creating a better tomorrow for so many people out there. Today, we have the honor of being joined by Jen and Tom Satterly, who are co-founders and Chief Operating Officer and CEO, respectively, of the All Secure Foundation, which is an organization that helps assist special operations, active duty, and veterans and their families in the recovery of post-traumatic stress through education, awareness, and resources to help healing, initiate workshop retreats, and ultimately post-traumatic stress resilience training. Tom is a highly decorated combat veteran. He served 25 years in the U.S. Army, 20 of them in the U.S. military's most elite Tier 1 unit, the Delta Force, and has been involved in and led some of our country's most important military campaigns, including Operation Gothic Serpent, which was portrayed in the 2001 film Black Hawk Down, also the capture of Saddam Hussein. He is the recipient of numerous medals, including 5 Bronze Stars, 2 for Valorous acts, and he was the first American to attend the German Ranger School after completing against hundreds of soldiers to win that singular honor. And his best-selling book, All Secure: A Special Operations Soldier Fight to Survive on the Battlefield and the Home Front, was released back in 2019 and can be found on all major booksellers. Jen spent 15 years as an award-winning filmmaker and photographer, and she spent the last 3 years of those as director of film and photography of a special operations training company that was embedded with Navy SEALs, Green Berets, Army Rangers, and other special operators. And during her time there, began to see this pattern from the soldiers, sailors, and airmen that she worked alongside, some of the very issues that Tom began to experience related to PTSD, and began to search at that time for various answers on how to constructively deal with the condition. Additionally, Jen is the founder of Virago, which is a platform for educating and empowering women who are facing the challenges of PTSD on the home front. And her book, entitled Arsenal of Hope: Tactics for Taking on PTSD Together, was just released in 2021 and also available at all major booksellers. We are honored to have both of them with us today. Tom and Jen Satterly, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having us on. Truly appreciate it.
Yeah, I've really looked forward to this episode. I'm gonna, I guess, be ping-ponging back and forth between you, but you can tag team as you wish. Tom, I'd love to start off with you. I've had the opportunity to listen to many of the shows you've previously been on, and there was one recently on, I think it was a Veterans Administration one, where you were talking about your time joining the Army, and at the time you really weren't thinking much about joining the service. You were contracting. I think there was a story about going to a John Cougar Mellencamp concert, and you decided at that point, you know what, I'm going to join the Army. Take us back a little bit to the beginning, if you would, and tell us a little of that backstory, if you would.
That sounds like the mind of a child who's not thinking clearly. And it was. I was a child not thinking clearly at all. I had no direction, right? I was stumbling into life, and my friend, one of my best friends in high school, had joined the Army after graduation. I was like, "What are you doing? You're a fool!" And but I had no plan either. I mean, I don't know if he had a plan, but that was his plan in motion. And I was building houses, and he came back from basic, and we had planned to go to John Cougar concert, and it's like an hour drive up to Indy. And he started telling me all about the basic training, yeah, but then it gets better, and the haircut's not so bad, and I'm going to Germany. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I'm going to Germany for a couple of years. I'm like, man, I'll never go to Europe, So on that drive up, he talked me into joining the Army. which I did and told my parents about later. Nothing says America like John Cougar and joining the military in the middle of Indiana. So I don't know. It was no thought. It was, I'll get college money. I'll go for 4 years and I'll get college money and I'll come back and I'll go to college and do what normal people do. I grew up without the military in my life. So normal to me was college or a job. So out of the blue, there was the military with zero plan other than to get in and get out and have some money. And that was my goal. Pay for college.
Awesome. And Jen, you were off, working for various nonprofits, corporate clients. You were, if it's hot, photographing the likes of, the Heidi Klums and Gwen Stefani's of the world. Talk a little bit about sort of how you got started and all that, and a little bit of what led you to this really interesting assignment when you first became embedded with the special operators.
I would have loved to photograph Heidi Klum. I have a girl crush on Heidi Klum. I was doing some fashion, much lower level fashion than that, but sports marketing, working with a company called Earbuds, Iron Man athletes, and beer companies, Jack Daniels. So kind of all over the board, working in the commercial world. I was asked to work in a special operation project, and I said no. I said no 3 times. I kept saying, listen, I don't know anything about special operations. I barely know anything about the military. My dad was in and out before I was born. So I just didn't feel qualified. I felt way out of my element. And honestly, probably a little bit of fear, of the unknown, and probably what Hollywood kind of paints this picture of what military is. And so the client was a former Army Ranger, and he just told me, he voluntold me. He's like, hey, I've already signed you up for this project. I really need you to come on it. I was doing other work with this client. So I'm like, well, it's probably a good thing to keep the other jobs, and ended up going on this side project. And when I was there, they were doing realistic military training exercises, and it was a SEAL team that was doing them. And I became fascinated what was happening on the other side of the field. And so I just asked if I could go on, can I go on one of these? And they're like, no, not really. And I said, well, how can I see one? They're like, well, the only way a civilian can see one is if you're a contractor working with us, or if you're a role player. And I said, I'll be a role player. And they're like, no, you absolutely do not want to be a role player. So I said, what about filming? Can I come in film? They're like, absolutely not. You can't. This is special operations. It's all secret. And I said, listen, I did some work with the Cardinals. They review every single footage, every single play, how you move a hand, a foot. You guys in special operations should be doing the same thing. You should be reviewing this footage. So SEALs liked it. Was picked up to start working with them through this company. And about 3.5 years later, I blinked too. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, Jen. Jen just mentioned sort of the Hollywood perspective that most of us that obviously will never experience, Tom, what you've experienced as a Delta Force operator or the Navy SEALs or the Green Berets or whatever. We have this Hollywood vision, rightly or wrongly, that bullets bounce off of you, that in the worst firefights that you could be in, your heart rate doesn't increase. And then I can watch. Yeah, I used to enjoy on the History Channel. They had this, the whole show on BUDS, basic underwater demolition, and the Navy SEALs. And every episode of that, you always had sort of the trainer standing there saying, yeah, this is physically hard, but 95% of it's in your head, and just get through it. And talk a little bit about sort of the side of sort of what I'll call mental resilience and training of special operators like you that we may not see when we're watching those Hollywood films or even the documentaries. I mean, did you go through, beyond obviously, taking your body to the extremes, were there parts of, that they tried to instill more mental resilience in you, or is it just something that you think back, that was kind of glossed over, and, take us into that, if you would.
Yeah, mental resilience. If you didn't have it in the day, they threw you right out. They didn't care, right? They needed you to have it. If you don't have it, you're gonna find out in a selection process. And the selection processes, I've gone through 2 hard ones, 2 difficult ones. To be a Green Beret, I went through the Special Forces assessment and selection process. And then to be in the unit, I went through a selection process. And what they're doing is they're looking for what they want in the job, right? Can you hang out like on the SFAS? Can you hang out and work as a team individually, but you're contributing to the team? And all of those tests that they give you, like push this Jeep through the sand for 12 miles with only 3 wheels on it, by the way. And then here's a couple of poles and some cinder blocks, figure it out, And so you got 12 guys trying to figure out how to move these 2 Jeeps 12 miles in the sand, or ammo cans back and forth, or sandbags for 12 hours. Just go put them over there. Okay, 500 meters, put them back over there, back over there. Who's going to get fed up and quit? They're trying to find out who can do the job, who can work as a team and not kill each other while doing it. Most people want to kill each other when they get under duress like that. And someone's not doing something the way that you think it should be going, you're going to let them know when you're under duress like that. So they want to see who those guys are as well. So they take you down as low as they can possibly take you physically and mentally, and no sleep. SFAS, it was like, all right, you get 4 hours of sleep a night. And oh, by the way, come up with a fire guard roster. Each one of you have 15 minutes of fire guard. In that 4 hours, you get to sleep. So nobody falls asleep at this go to sleep mark. Nobody wakes up at the wake up mark, because you got to be ready to go at the wake up mark. And in that 4 hour period, you got to do 15 minutes, but they got to wake you up 10 minutes prior so they know you're awake. And then it takes you 30 minutes to go to sleep. So you're getting 2.5, 3 hours of sleep a night. You start losing it. And then they take you down and ask you all the deep, dark questions when you're tired, and see who quits, what your answers are under duress and stress, and what your thought process is. And I think that's who they find you are as a core individual. And if you're good enough, they take you. We've had guys that are physically so fit in the unit in selection. When I was sitting there as a sergeant major deciding their fate, during the selection process, that we didn't take. Physically fit studs that broke records. And then we asked them some questions, and they just can't answer the question for you. 30 minutes, person wouldn't answer the question. Like, all right, I've seen enough. Thanks. I don't want a person that can't open up and talk right at that moment. So they're kind of cracking the nut as to who you are as a human. Now, did they teach you any of that mental resilience? A little bit during training, not in Special Forces, but at the unit, they teach you a little bit of mind mapping, thought process, visualization. Visualize yourself shooting the bullseye. Visualize yourself doing this mission exactly right, like a lot of athletes do. That's about the extent of it. There were no instruction on how to remain resilient mentally, right? Mm-hmm. They just expected you to. And I think that environment warranted it, where alpha males around other alpha males are like, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine too. Yeah, I'm all fine. We're all screwed up. We were all screwed up. But we're all looking at each other saying, I'm fine, because I'm not going to show any weakness in this shark pool because somebody wants your job all along the way. I mean, it's a ruthless world. It's a ruthless, cutthroat, loving tribe where we all love and support each other until maybe they want your job, or you're not doing the perfect, you're not doing your job perfectly. Then they want your job because they don't think you can do it well enough. So it's a daily stressor to swipe your badge just to get into work, and it turns green. You're like, oh, I can go a little further. Swipe your badge, you get in the back of the bay. Oh, okay, I get in the bay. Swipe your badge, you get out of the bay to go in the hallway. Oh, okay, go into the lunch hall, breakfast or whatever. Every time it turns green or red, and some people have had their badges turn red and they got to go figure out what's going on. You didn't do this paperwork, you didn't do this, or hey, we need to talk to you about this, or hey, you're just not quite cutting it anymore. So we've locked all your access down, and here's your stuff, and see ya. Where do you want to go? Like, you're not getting screwed over. You can go to pick where you go after that, which is a pretty good deal, but it's not here. So it's mentally challenging, and I think they expect you to show up that way.
Jen, you come back from this assignment, or you maybe in the process of the assignment, you're developed the skill to recognize some of these symptoms of PTSD in terms of anxiety and depression and so forth, people isolating themselves. And then there's a point, there's a quote, Tom, I think you have PTSD, where you realize something's up. Can you talk about that period of time when there was this realization from your own experiences?
I'm like most people. It's not like you sit around and study PTS, the symptoms of it, and how to look for it. And back in 2013, when I met Tom, PTS was still, it wasn't talked about. Like it absolutely, in military service for sure, wasn't talked about. So it wasn't like today. I feel like there's more people open and more people having conversations and more people asking for different modalities of healing. It's becoming more part of the conversation. In 2013, it was none, gone. There was nothing there really. And so when I noticed Tom's behavior, he would go from really calm and happy, and all of a sudden a switch would flip, and it would flip fast, and it would go straight to rage. Skip all the 1 to 10 of anger, 11 being rage. He would go straight to 11. And for me, it was really confusing because I'm like, this isn't an 11 situation. Maybe this is a 2 or 3, but why is he constantly getting to this space of rage? Why is he constantly, things that were embarrassing or shameful were huge triggers. And I started noticing that in the community too. Anyone getting called out for anything, anyone being questioned for something. And what I came to realize is those questions most often in the community are life or death. And then the brain can't distinguish a threat from a non-threat. Is this life or death, or is this, there's a cup in the sink? And the brain can't recognize that. So it was super frustrating for me, confusing. I mean, we probably broke up almost 1,000 times because I'm like, this is destructive. It's toxic. What am I still doing here? And then the next minute he's charming and he's funny and tender and loving. And so for me, it was just extremely isolating, because what you end up doing is saying this relationship is different. It's weird. It's strange. It's not like my friends, who are married to accountants. And what it turned out was actually, yeah, I've got some friends who are married to accountants that have PTS, and there's very similar things.
It wasn't so true.
Yeah, it wasn't true. It's not relegated to the military or law enforcement. And I didn't even recognize I had a complex PTS until Tom. So through my journey with him, I discovered things about myself, but I just started seeing those same things: isolation, drinking to medicate, reckless behavior, and I'm thinking, well, they went off to war, right. They've gone to war. So my God, doing these things is nothing to them. But then when I started talking to more and more, I realized it wasn't, I'm trying to numb what I'm feeling. I'm just trying to feel something. I'm trying to get that back, that adrenaline, that whatever it is. And so it was a couple of years of confusion. I'm not going to say I got to work on day one. Right. Probably, day 1,001.
The scary part is the speed in which it happens, the change in tempo, the change in emotions. You go emotional versus factual. And that's what we hear from all the warriors. And that's what I experienced was, I'm not even mad. And then I'm outraged and I want to kill you. I mean, it goes straight from, I'm not mad. And then boom, I want to kill you back to, oh, that was stupid, wasn't it? And now the person you did that to was like freaked out. And you're like, what? I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. And you're like, but it's too late. You've elevated. It's that life and death elevation of, I need to react now. And so the awareness of catching that early on is so key to everybody that has that issue of catch it early. Stop it, because you can't stop it when you're in the process of it. It's like working with dogs. If you watch,
I was going to say, it's like
Caesar Milan, when he's like, you got to get in their head before they get in the red zone of the rage, because then you can't get them out of it. You catch it, see that ear go, where his head twitches, or my face goes, what'd you say? It's time to snap me out of it, or I'm going to enrage, because that's how I've been trained for 25 years and rewarded with awards and accolades and thank you. And oh, by the way, good job being violent for those 25 years. And now we get out and we're like, we're not supposed to be violent in any manner at all. That's just weird. And then we'll argue the fact, well, you're just stupid. And we go back and forth because you're speaking to someone that's maybe more educated than you, that can calmly talk you into something. And you're getting frustrated. And what comes out in a veteran that's been in combat, when he's frustrated, it's not more thought, it's violence. Like, I have to dominate and get big to be correct. So we have to change that behavior.
And so, you both, you come together, you're together, you have the idea to create the All Secure Foundation. And I really, enjoyed reading, going through the website, and obviously we'll link to it in the bio of the show. But the fact you brought together just a really holistic sort of system here, in the terms that you have a marriage and trauma therapist. It's not just psychological. You go into sort of food and sort of different daily habits. I know there's some short retreats, but then there's some long ones, sort of a 6-week body reset. Take us, both of you can ping pong on this one as much as you want. Just take us into sort of, when you first thought about forming the foundation, a little bit of what it was like to, I guess, the first customers that came along. And then, as Jen, you were just saying about, obviously there's PTS. in the elite combat veterans, but also, maybe PTSD and accountants and lawyers and what have you. Talk a little bit the clientele that you're getting, because I'm sure you're getting all sorts of PTS is, shows up in various guises in different areas of our world. If you could take us through a little bit of that as well, and interesting stories of, wow, I didn't think, a pharmacist would, I'm a pharmacist by training, would have PTSD after 20 years of standing behind the counter at CVS.
Yeah. Well,
that could drive you crazy.
Yeah, it could.
It did. Sorry. I went to 11.
When people come in and complain to you about what you're not giving them, I'm sure they get pretty upset about that, right?
Yeah.
And that affects you.
And it could come from any source. And,
Exactly.
I think that's the thing that can be really confusing, even in warrior relationships, where, it's really easy to point a finger towards the warfighter and say, you're screwed up. You've been through more. The problem's yours. And, of course, the issues seem bigger and there's a lot more to deal with. But oftentimes the spouse can reflect and say, what was my childhood like? What was my adolescence like? What was my experience like? And what am I bringing to this as well? And for me, having an abusive childhood and sexual assault, I thought I've dealt with that because I've buried it. I put it away. I shoved it under the rug. I did some therapy. I'm good. And it wasn't until we started having issues that the therapist was like, yeah, well, this is your secondary and your complex PTS showing up. And I'm like, wait, me? I haven't been to war. I haven't done this or that. And it really helped open up my own aperture of how I was showing up to work, my children, my relationships. So it can come from anywhere. It could come from seeing a terrible car accident. It could come from, abuse or any traumatic situation, either singular or complex is when it happens over and over and over again, like war, law enforcement, or abuse. And then secondary is when often in law enforcement or in military families or someone who has severe PTS, that PTS seeps into the family, and that's called secondary PTS. When you start adjusting your behavior because you don't know how they're going to act or react, so you adjust your life, you start developing maybe anxiety or depression, and you're asking yourself, why am I feeling this way? I didn't have childhood abuse. I've never had sexual assault. I've never seen an accident. My husband went to war, not me. Well, that constant fear or response, fight, flight, or freeze also can be developed over anticipation or experiences at home. So it could come from lots of different places. And I think that's important for people to understand. During COVID, we had tons of nurses and doctors reaching out for help, saying, this is awful. And I'm seeing more in societal pressures, and people who were sitting at home watching TV 24/7, constantly thinking about, am I going to die? Am I going to get sick? Is my kid going to get sick? Is my husband going to get sick? Developed PTS. So again, like we're starting to see a lot of mental health issues now that we're a good 2-3 years out of this, is exactly when people started saying we would start to see this.
Yep.
So that's how, we've helped people. Our books, we've heard a ton of people, accountants, pharmacists, whoever else, saying, I picked up your book. I'm not military, but it really helped me understand my own life. Because I think when you share your story, someone else can hear some level of common, even most extreme stories. I felt that way too, or I experienced that too, or, my husband or my father was that way. So we've helped a ton of people. Our mission, our chapter, our 5013 is for special operation, active duty, and veteran warfighters. So we have
And their
retreats. We do retreats. We have a 6-week mind and body reset. That's a self-guided reset that really anyone, it's free. You could go on our site, download it. It's going to talk to you about meditation and journaling and proper foods and supplements, because when we treat our body right, our mind gets right too. So a lot of guys are like, I've been struggling. I'm doing all the things. And I'm like, but you're drinking 3 Rippets a day and you're not sleeping but 4 hours a night. And so you have to address the body in order to heal the mind too. So that's why that's there. But we have our coaches 365 and
they're all, well, they're all civilian. And our lead coach had never worked with military before until Jen and I. And she was our 4th counselor when we were looking for help. And when she helped us in such a way, we decided to bring her on to help. She was like, I don't know, I've never worked with military. And then 6 months into it, she's like, military people do what you tell them to do. And I'm like, yeah, that makes it. Just tell them what to do. If they're not listening, just tell them exactly what to do and they'll do it.
Yeah.
And she's like, I like working with them, but our clientele are no different than anybody else other than their experiences, not on how they feel.
Okay.
And we try to explain that to people. It doesn't matter really this side of it. That's called judgment, right? And and that's comparison is the killer, is the thief of all healing, because people call all the time, well, my trauma's not like yours, but I waited 6 months to call, or I didn't see combat like you. I'm like, man, you're already comparing,
Right.
which is the thief of healing. And I tell them, guys will call and say, look, I need help, but I need a therapist that's been to war so they understand me. And I'm like, well, our therapists don't see anyone unless they've gone to school for 8 years. So it works out well that way. Does that make sense to you? And they're like, what? I go, why do they need to go to combat when they've gone to school to study this side of how it makes you feel?
Right.
Not what made you feel this way, but you feel this way. Now let's get back this side. So the way we help everybody, I mean, the only reason we help just special operations is what we know, and money, obviously. You can't help everybody. You run out of
Sure.
money, anybody. So we stick with what we know. And those are the worst cases, the ones that don't reach out. I'm all right. I'm tough. I'm too embarrassed to say I need help. And so that's most of our job, is getting people to open up and feel that it's okay to reach out and not ask for help, but ask for training in something they haven't been trained in before. Just like they were trained on how to shoot, do whatever job they did in the world, in the military, anywhere around the world, you were trained in it when you didn't know. And that wasn't embarrassing. So if you don't know how to stay in a healthy relationship and communicate properly, or express how you feel in a better way that's not violence, then come get trained on how to do that. And if you've been trained in that previously, come get retraining. We'll do that, but we don't need to help you, right? People don't like that word help.
One of the so I my background, I'm a pharmacist that sort of grew up in the pharmaceutical industry, and there was a little period of time about 15 years ago that I got involved in psychedelic drug development work at one of the companies I was involved in. And there was, I came across this article just from a couple of months ago. U.S. veterans with PTSD turn to psychedelic drugs overseas as VA frustration grows. And Tanya, you're both interviewed in it, and really talk about some wonderful experiences. Back when I was involved, we were focused more on opiate withdrawal, but obviously the connections to all things PTS, some of the stuff that I've seen since then have been quite miraculous. Tom, if you could talk a little bit about sort of your own experiences there, and I think you played around with the 5-DMT from the Sonoran Toad and all that. And then Jen, in your book, there's actually an interesting chapter called "Magic Pills Are for Fairy Tales," but you talk about taking advantage of interesting, novel things, and obviously psychedelics are quite novel modalities. If you could sort of come in from that, sort of the experiences that you've seen externally to sort of some of the psychedelic experiences.
Yeah, let me just start by saying I don't believe there's, and I haven't seen yet, one thing that can tackle PTS.
Sure.
And so even people who feel amazing like we did, and have had a ton of growth, still need to continue the process of healing. So people, we've had a ton of people go through psychedelics. We both have done that, and really gained a lot from the experience, but we also had to come back and do behavioral change and behavioral work. Otherwise, we slipped right back.
It's a lifelong journey.
Right.
Sadly, some friends of ours have gone and done the psychedelics and then come back. Oh, I'm good for a month. I quit drinking. Alcoholics quit drinking. I'm like, all right, but what are you doing? I'm good. A month later, they start drinking again, and here they are drinking and doing psychedelics. It's one of those things where the persistence of the reality of what you really need. You're not going to get one and done. You're not going to go to therapy once and be okay. You're not going to take any one pill and be fine. You're not going to take any one drug and be fine. You need behavioral change. It's the muscle memory. I tell guys, you've shot your pistol so many times. You can take a life while looking into the next room, thinking about what you need to do to protect yourself because you're so good at it. It's muscle memory. Right. You've done it so many times. You can't break the muscle memory of aggression and violence in a pill.
Sure.
In a short time. Right? You can take the pill to get you to start. You can continue the pills, whatever they are. If they keep you feeling like you can continue to work on your behavior, because that's the problem, right? Your behavior is what other people find the problem. If it's bad behavior, it's a problem, right? And so that's behavioral issues. You need to change those habits and patterns, and that's self-awareness and admittance. Guys don't want to admit they're doing the bad things. You're doing the wrong thing. And by the way, no one likes you to behave like that in the civilian world. When you get out of the military and you act like a dominant, arrogant person, that's exactly what they think about you, and no one wants to talk to you anymore. And then the veterans come out like, well, I'm not going to submit. You're not submitting, you're not. And what was that? The words they don't like in AA? Surrender, right? You must surrender. Like, a lot of guys won't go to AA. I would never surrender. I'm like, oh, come on, use those words for what they're meant for, man. Don't put those in exact terms, but getting them the help they need, and they need to realize it's forever. My help will be forever. I mean, it's less and less. I have more happy days than bad days. It used to be happy minutes, a happy hour in a day, maybe. And then the 23 hours were hell, and I was feeling sad about what I had done. Those times are few and far in between now. And when they still happen, it's still horrible, but I don't live in them. But they have to be persistent. The 5-MeO we went to, we thought about it for years. A couple
2
of
years.
Like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Mushrooms, I don't know, It's a scary thing. So we do the research, and when we decided to do it, we always do it and then write about it. We write about everything we do so people who are interested can read our opinions. We're not selling anything. We're telling you what we found from it.
Sure.
I remember waking up out of it when I was finished. It was probably an hour and a half of 5-MeO, 7 different journeys along the way, and each one getting less and less. And when I came out, I remember sitting up, coming to within 15, 20 minutes and almost being normal again, going, tell me nobody does this recreationally, please. Because that was hell on earth. I mean, honestly,
that was not fun. That's not a party drug.
To try to be able to describe it is nearly impossible. It's one of those things where I knew I was dead. I was dying. Yeah. My body was rejecting the fact that I was dying. And I remember them mentally. I thought, they said this to give into it. The sooner you give into this, the quicker you learn. I thought, all right, and I said, the F-bomb, and I'm in. And I went in. And I relented. And I remember that moment, and it became hell for a bit. And then I got my wits about me and fought the demons that I had. The things that I was going through all made sense while I was going through it. When I came out of it for months, I mean, to ask her about it.
3 months, yeah.
It's like I was
drastically
different person than I've ever been in my life. And I found joy. I went in with one intention, and that was to find joy. I hadn't felt joy. I'd been happy. I hadn't found joy in 30 years, maybe more. I don't know. And I cried so much after that I was so happy. I think I was laying there crying.
Yeah, you were for sure.
Laughing and crying at the same time. I was so happy. I couldn't believe how happy I actually was. And I stayed that way for 3 months at least, with zero, maybe, I don't know if zero is a good number, but very few issues at all.
Like, rage did not come back at all. Anger, because that's a normal human emotion that we all have. Sure, anger showed up, but rage did not.
And we've done so much work previous and then post that as well, that I think that is the big difference. And we've looked into going back to do a different journeys, with like psilocybin or something to help other people and go. And it's like one of those, well, do we really need to right now? Because I go back to the 5-MeO, I'm like, oh, I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to do that again. I don't want to throw up again. Like, that was horrible.
Right.
And they're like, well, with mushrooms, it's worse. I'm like, what? I don't know about that. That's more than 20 minutes or an hour and a half. 5-MeO was the quickest. Now, ayahuasca is like a 5-day journey, maybe, or longer. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do that for 5 days, but I guess it's more peaceful.
It goes against our own advice of I don't have time to heal, though.
Right. That's exactly why we did the 5-MeO. We sell it to everybody. Listen, your life, you're living it. You got to take credit and take advantage and take action. And you can't say I don't have time, because that's not taking your life in your own hands. And they're like, well, do you want to come down to Peru? We're like, I don't have time, so I'll go over here for an hour. We did the same thing.
Yeah,
it was and everything we do together. I went first and she watched, and I remember waking up and I go, you are a brave woman to watch me go through that. I don't even know what I did, right? I don't even know what I look like. And then I watched her go through it, and I thought, oh my God, the whole time I thought she was dying. I learned so much that I don't know the why. I don't know the why yet. That's a doctor's, let a doctor handle that one. But it did work. That did work. Now, are there issues, or could there be issues with that? I'm sure there's issues with anything. Abuse on anything can be issues. But what we did and what I experienced and what we felt after that, was pretty powerful. Amazing and powerful. And it carried us for a while. And we haven't been back yet. That was over a year ago.
That was in February. So
almost a year ago. And still doing well. and looking to do some other stuff, but we're always looking to do other stuff. So it's the fact that you can never quit doing these things. The Americans want that. I want to get big, so let's take the steroids. Oh, I gained too much weight. What do you take to get skinny? Oh, I'm hungry. I don't want to eat, so let's take this pill. I'm crazy. Let's take another pill. We like to throw pills at things, and I think they're great to get you going.
Right.
I don't think living on any one thing is good for you at all.
Yeah, it's been a powerful journey for many, for sure, us included.
Yeah, that's I appreciate you sharing those experiences. I just read about it a couple of months ago in one of the press articles, but the fact again of coming back to sort of the come back to the holistic stuff that you're doing at All Secure, that and again pointing at the one chapter in Jen's book about you got to look at multiple modalities here. There is, as you're saying, there's no magic bullet for any of this, and the fact that you're out there experimenting and experiencing things and then able to guide other people is another testament to what you're doing. So I appreciate you sharing that as well. Speaking of magic bullets for a minute, I just, Tom, I'd ask you a question in the sense that I've had a couple guests on the show recently from Special Operations Command down at MacDill Air Force Base. One of them was the Director of Science and Technology, and aside from drones and robotics and all the stuff they work on down there, there's this whole area of sort of nutritional / medical interventions to help create one day, I said they don't say the super soldiers, but more resilient humans, let's say, for battle. And I just love to get your thoughts in the sense, if they were to say, hey, we need to get Tom Satterly down here to advise us on sort of what we need at Special Operations Command, looking out, say, 5-10 years. What would you advise, specifically when it comes to this mental resilience stuff? Are there sort of things that you think about, like, wow, if I could do it all over again or go back 25 years, if we had certain tools, whether they were medicines or, other interventions at the time, hey, I would like to see that developed, or, that would have helped a lot. And anything like cross your mind in that sense?
Yeah, I remember being in our gym for years saying, why don't they have a steroid machine over there? I go over and put in, push your button to get your steroids. We should be creating super soldiers. I was an advocate of it. They should make us better, use us, right? It's all marketing, man. It's all recruitment. I believed in. I'm thinking, yeah, we need to be super soldiers so we can just win. And then I see the biggest guys, just fall.
Right.
In battle, I'm like, oh, you can't outrun a bullet. I get it now. Okay. In my opinion, to create that super soldier would be create somebody that's resilient on their own and that takes care of themselves. We create soldiers that don't take care of themselves. They take care of everything else but themselves. And so therefore they break. And when they break, we get a new one. And I'm like, do you know the cost of that?
Right.
We speak to leaders at Special Operations and we talk to all the leaders. I'm like, look, when somebody comes up and says, I'm an alcoholic now, which they made bad decisions, but we've created it with them. And most of you are alcoholics. And they say, I need 6 weeks to dry up, and you fire them. Now, if the guy snapped his femur, he'd get 6 to 8 weeks and you wouldn't say a word.
Right.
So you do have the ability to miss that person and not break down. So taking care of our people who need the breaks, making it almost difficult not to take breaks or mandatory breaks. You can only deploy this much. And then you have to go to this kind of counseling and you have to sit and talk because they're not going to do it on their own because you've already created the environment where you have to be tough on your own. The old guys are telling the young guys, rub dirt on it and suck it up. And we're coming in going, that gives you an infection. And they're like, oh, well, you're just a baby. I'm like, okay, all right. I've done some shit you'll never do. I'm not a baby. I've learned. And starts with what you put in your mouth, right? People take better care of their cars and their dogs, for Christ's sake. They'll buy the best dog foods and they'll spend all the money and they'll go to McDonald's. I'm like, all right, now, I'm not trashing McDonald's. Don't come sue me, but bad food, right? Fast food. We all know what's good for us. Well, we should know what's good for us. The information's out there, right? Yep. So I would start with healthy eating, good movement, right? Not the crushing type where guys go out and put 1,000 pounds in their rucksack so they'll get stronger quicker. That's how I trained. If I make it suck now, it won't suck in combat. So everything I did had to suck. And I'd let them know you don't need to practice life sucking for you to know it's going to suck down the road. But it would be food, it would be physical activity, and it would be counseling, mental health work. So they could talk about what bothers them. And it would be relationship issues, because when guys take off and they have relationship issues at home and family issues, when I say relationship issues, and I would probably temper the time that they spend away. and I would force some more time at home. Looking at that financially, I
Yep.
bet it would save money financially. We look at it now financially going, well, if I have you and you're not at work, you're at home and I'm paying you still, because in the Army, you get paid 24 hours a day. Now divide what you get paid by 24 hours a day. You don't get paid that much, right? So you can go home a little bit more often and I think it makes a healthier, longer lasting soldier that you don't have to spend more money on when they get out because they're so broken. The money comes in droves then. You're going to spend the money. Do you spend it while they're in and keeping them fit and healthy,
Right.
creating a better super soldier that's mentally fit to fight versus he's not mentally fit, but he's crazy and he'll go in and do anything, right? But when he gets out, you've taken care of him while he's in. You'll spend less money when they're out as well.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to spend all this money to, I think they're relying a lot on nonprofits and private,
There's 45,000 veteran nonprofits.
just
There's
because
few
the
of them.
government can't pay for that much, people in need, honestly.
Right.
And the complain about the VA, I'm like, think about it. You get what you pay for. It's free. You're going to wait 6 months and then you're going to get in line again. And I'm sorry, but when you're taking care of that many people, you have to consider moving to another source if you can.
Right. Jen, Virago, a woman of strength or spirit, heart of a healer, spirit of a warrior. Talk a little bit about what you're doing with this platform and some of your experiences there.
I have met some of the most incredible women over the last 9 years, military spouse, who are the definition of resilient, who also hate the word resilient. So much of that comes from is the military's like, hey, we've made you resilient. They're like, gee, thanks. I didn't ask for this. But to have an understanding of what is involved in military life,
Mm-hmm.
what is involved in veteran life. There's so many people like myself that get married after Tom's time in service. He was already retired when I met him. So a lot of veteran spouses are coming in saying, I have no base. I have no clue. And like I was asking the active duty wives, I'd meet Tom, I'd meet his friends, and then I'd meet the wives, so we become friends. And I'm like, where's the book? And they're like, what book? I'm like, there's got to be a training manual for us.
What to expect when you're with a crazy
what to
person.
expect when you marry military. And they're like, there's no book. And I'm like, how have you done it? So I just started asking, like, how have you done it for 20 years or 15 years or 5 years or whatever it may be? And I started hearing the same answers that I was hearing when I'd ask questions on the other side that just were very familiar and same. Didn't matter if I was in Texas or Florida or New York. I was hearing the same kind of thing, which is, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to do. Something's wrong with me. So it's internalizing what's happening. We're broken. I'm broken. Our kids are broken, and there's no one to help us. And we don't know what to do about it. And so I created Virago as a safe place where women can go and get those answers, and they can go and support each other. And they can do it in a way that they feel very safe doing it. Oftentimes in the military world, especially in special operations, you might have a spouse come into an area. They don't know any of the other wives. They don't know. They're putting their kid into another school again. They know they're leaving in 2 years again. So it's very difficult to hold down a job or really to encourage your children to make friends again. It's just a very, very difficult life. And I think the mindset is similar to the soldier one. Is you signed up for it. You knew what you were getting into. What's the big deal here? And it's a very big deal. And that's actually one of the things that infuriates me most when I hear people say things like that, is we have to support each other. I mean, all of us in the United States, we are one tribe. And there's many different people to this tribe: doctors, lawyers, teachers, soldiers, garbage men, your barista. There are many people that make up the society, and we need each other. And so with Virago, the idea is bringing that forward. Listen, this is one tribe. There's not a single wife that's the same than the other. One's a doctor, another one is a hairdresser, one is a tattoo artist, another one is, working in the neuroscience field. So we're not bounded by the same kind of likes, interests, and goals and mission that our husbands are. So it's a little bit more challenging also for us to find our community. So Virago is part of creating one.
That's awesome. It's an awesome message. Other things coming up. I know there was a press release recently. It's working with a Canadian organization, again, on sort of the health and wellness front. anything else that I missed, or things that are hot for 2023 that may be coming up that you can mention now? Please, Jen, Tom, either one of you both. If I missed anything, please take the floor.
We're pushing on. We've brought on additional coaches and therapists to our program. We've really exploded. One of the great things is we partner with so many other nonprofits in the special operations world. They might offer something very specific, like the stellate ganglion block shot, or they might offer the psychedelics, or they might offer a nutritional program. Every single program requires some type of behavioral cognitive therapy with it. These other organizations don't provide that. So we've started to partner with additional organizations, being that leg, being that arm. So say, for instance, you've got some guys, they're going off with Heroic Hearts Project. They're going to go do ayahuasca. They're going to come back. They're going to reintegrate. And then they need additional help in relationships, life, PTS. They come to us, and they can be with us up to a year of intensive coaching. So that's really the bulk of what we do. We're super proud of that program. We've helped over 1,100 warriors and spouses come through just last year. And that doesn't count the amount of retreats that we do that we'll continue on with this year. And what else? What else is our podcast?
We're looking for land elsewhere. So we're looking for a facility, which started when COVID started for our first mission.
In February 2020, we started this. That was not a good time to start.
We're like, let's take it to the special ops community.
And then March happened.
And then COVID hit. We're like, all right, land. Nobody, was doing anything. So that went on pause. We've started looking back into that to have a facility so we can do it all year long versus 4 to 6 times a year. But I mean, our bulk is just the daily counseling that we do to help people, and their families. And then we bring those into the retreats, or we bring them into retreat to start them on the counseling. Either way that we can get it to go. But once they get the taste of it, they like it. So we try to keep that going. But buying some land somewhere with some cabins, doing our own thing.
Nice.
We continually do it throughout the year. Is what our next big thing is, I think.
Awesome.
Barring getting pandemics.
Yeah. God forbid. No, it's an amazing story and a journey you've been on with this, and just really, wishing you the best with it. I've as I said, I've really enjoyed watching and listening to both of you on other shows, and now it's just been an honor having both of you here. And really, what you're doing is amazing, and I continue to follow you. And obviously, we'll put the links to all these initiatives in the bio of the show to help spread the word. For everybody that is, again, going to be listening to this particular episode of our show across the podcast networks or watching on the YouTube channel, again, you've been listening to Tom and Jen Satterly, co-founders and CEO and Chief Operating Officer of the All Secure Foundation. Pick up their books, All Secure, Special Operations, Soldiers Fight to Survive on the Battlefield and the Home Front, as well as Arsenal of Hope, Tactics for Taking on PTSD Together. Tom, Jen, I want to thank you for taking the time out of both your schedules to come talk to us for a little while about everything you're doing. Obviously, thank you for doing it. And Tom, thank you for your long service to our country and keeping us safe. And as we like to say on our show here, thanks to both of you for creating a better tomorrow for so many people out there that need your help. It's a really, really great story.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah,
it's great to joining you. Appreciate it.